First and foremost, thank you guys for coming. We appreciate it. I know there's a lot of constraints on your time, and the fact that you took time to come to this, we hope that you'll get some good information out of the topic. So if you've been here before, you know the routine. In case there's a fire, you're going to exit right out the door you came in where you parked. If you're looking for the restrooms, they're out the door and to the right. And then we've got plenty of food, and Tammy said to say after the session, please come out and get more food because they have a ton left. So we're excited about this topic. Obviously, quality is a topic that transcends industry. It also transcends your role in the industry, and it's something that should be of critical importance to all of us. It obviously impacts many different things in positive ways and in negative ways, and we've all read about organizations that make quality a priority, and we see the benefit and return on investment there. And then we all, unfortunately, read about organizations where quality kind of slips away. And I said this about compliance last month, but I also think that it's important on quality. I don't think any organization or any employee wakes up and goes, hey, I want to get outside the boundaries of quality. I think just over time they evolve and it becomes, it's not mission critical, and we get busy and then we wake up and we're way out here and we're looking around and going, what happened on this project or what happened on this initiative or whatever. And we've all probably been there where you do a lessons learned and you look back and you go, wow, I can see all along the way where there were quality issues and areas for improvement, as we refer to a lot. So again, we're excited you're here. You've got three fantastic presenters. Today's a special day because we're actually presenting with one of our clients who's been very instrumental in our journey in quality within Management Solutions, and we're very appreciative, Christy, of your time and being with us. So three presenters, Chris Bible, Kelly Conway, and Christy Kistner from ORAU. So I'm going to turn it over to these guys, and they'll jump right into it.
Thanks, Misty. And again, I want to reinforce what Misty said by another thank you for y'all coming today, being willing to listen to us and have a good, hopefully an open discussion about quality, the concept of quality specifically within a project management kind of arena. That's kind of what we do, right? So I'm going to get into it as quickly as possible and start talking about how that's important to us here at Management Solutions. What we've done as a team to kind of rise to the challenge, to kind of up the bar, raise the bar on quality, and what that looks like for us within our organization, right? I'm going to talk about a project quality office and how that actually is a tool that we use to equip our PMs with things they need to do their job better, right? To make their lives easier, to make our customers' lives better, because if we can do our job better, it makes our clients happier, right? So that's kind of our goal. We're always customer focused. Quality is all about customer focus, meeting clients' expectations, exceeding them if possible, right? That's what it's all about, right? We also want to, like Misty said, have Christy kind of close it out with some perspective from ORAU. That organization kind of helped mentor us, give us checks and balances that we were actually building our project quality office. They were mentoring us through the process a little bit in terms of the client expectations and what that would look like from their side of the house, right? So we wanted to build our project quality office around what a client that we would serve would actually want to have. So we wanted that kind of real-time feedback. So kind of a QC along the way as we're building our QA program, right, kind of thing. So that's what we're going to talk about today, right? So specifically, what is quality? Y'all from different organizations around the area, how do y'all define quality? Mark, you have a definition of quality, you have a quality background. You talked to me earlier a little bit. How does your organization define quality?
Well, I would say quality is is first of all, it's defined by the customer, always. It's always defined by the customer, or the stakeholders in the project, but the customer. Yeah, but it's a set of inherent characteristics, right, that or criteria that in this case projects that I heard the term boundary, right?
Mm-hmm.
We bound it, but so it's a set of characteristics that project will have at the end.
So it's
and hopefully we meet the expectations of our. I do caution. I never try to exceed the customer's expectations because typically, if you exceed quality expectations, there was a level of effort to do that.
Right,
who
right.
paid for that?
So the curve kind of lays
over,
right?
And you're giving more than I want. Well, who paid for it? Are you going to take
Right.
that cost, or am I going to pay for that? I didn't want that.
That kind of more ties into the definition of value, right? Value is something the customer's willing to pay for, right? And within that, there's a quality context that's certainly appropriate to discuss. Thank you for that. Good definition. One way we define it, much to your point, is consistent conformance to customers' expectation. Because like you said, the customer actually defines quality. They set the bar for us, right? They tell us what they want. here's where it is, guys, jump high, get over the bar, right? And to your point, Mark, if we jump too much higher than that, well, you're still over the bar, but nobody paid you to jump higher, right? But consistent conformance to customers' expectations is kind of a fundamental definition, at least the way I think about it, of quality and what that means, right? So within Management Solutions specifically, we are a client-focused organization, right? We're client-centric. It's all about our customer, all about serving them, all about doing what they need, meeting or exceeding the expectations about just enough to make them happy and want to come back to us at the very least, right? So I'm not going to read the slide to you, but here's basically the objectives we have with quality in Management Solutions, right? These components, the hexagon of hexagon components. This is kind of what we think it means to our clients and how we like to actually approach this whenever we are setting up a project, setting up a program, setting up an engagement with someone, right? This is the way we want to look at it and bring it to the marketplace. So the Project Management Institute is kind of like the Bible of project management and program management for us, right? This is the definition, the chapter and verse of what we do day in, day out. And within that codex of knowledge, that body of knowledge, there are certain statements about quality that they make, right? So I'm not going to read the slide to you, but you can see they're all around the customer. They're all around customer focused, customer centric kind of things, meeting the expectations, delivering. Say what you do what you say, right? Fundamental theorem of ISO 9000. Say what you do and do what you say, right? So that's kind of what the PMI is all about, and that's kind of, again, tied back into our hexagon of hexagons. That's how we want to approach it. That's what we want it to look like, right? So if you don't have a quality-centric organization or a quality-centric approach at your client management, your customer engagement, you're meeting the expectations. If you don't have that, then the ship can easily steer off course, right? A lot of you folks in here have similar backgrounds in project management or project controls, this sort of thing. I bet you that there's a lot of stories in this room about how things have gone wrong, right? And the way things have gone wrong whenever there was not really a quality-centric focus around what we were doing, right? Bottom line, errors and omissions from an engineering perspective, that's the root cause of something, right? The errors and omissions, and then from that, everything else spills out. You got late stuff, you got things you missed, you got things that you didn't spec right, and Lord help you if you bill them wrong, right? That kind of thing. So from an engineering perspective and a program or project management perspective, errors and omissions in the scoping of a project or a program are critical to setting the bar where it needs to be. If you don't know where the bar is, you don't know how to jump, right? So you got to have that going for you. So you want to be sure you catch it all. Don't overrun your cost. And if you have an issue, be sure to communicate the issue early on, right? So with your client, with your customers, with your coworkers. If you do recognize an issue, if you can see the train wreck coming, it's important to communicate always that you see something coming that's going to be an issue, and hopefully you can head it off before it's actually a problem, before it's actually a train wreck, right? So now that I've teed up what can go wrong, let's talk about Kelly Conley. Here's Kelly Conley, about what we've done at Management Solutions to attempt to approach the what can go wrong and put a framework around how we can keep it from going wrong. Okay? Kelly?
Thank you. I want to stay on the what can go wrong just for a moment, because quality was in the news this week. Did any of you see the news about Kobe Steel?
Yes.
Now that was interesting. If you didn't see it, what it was depending on which headline you looked at, they either improperly certified or falsified the certification of metals. They're of course a steel, aluminum, copper manufacturer. They certified it to be a certain quality standard for their customers, and their customers include Toyota, Mitsubishi, Boeing. So these metallic parts go into a lot of the things that make a difference on life safety for many of us. And they have been doing it since, I believe, 2016. So over a year, they had been providing incorrect quality certifications. So they said, we meet your quality program, and they didn't. Now, they self-reported this, which is good. They said they caught it in an internal assessment, and I think that's an important point to having a quality office or a project quality office. Any comments from the room on that? I mean, just, as far as that type of thing, I think as customers, their customers probably said, well, paperwork says it's right, so they accepted it. Any comments?
I think not just in the Department of Energy world or commercial nuclear, the problem of suspect counterfeit items is it's bad when the people that are counterfeiting have better quality departments, serious,
Yes.
than your own department. I mean, they do. It's sometimes very hard, very hard. I remember I supported a review over at the ENIC, the Emirate Nuclear Energy Corporation. They're building 4 new nuclear plants over in the UAE.
Right.
I went over there to support a review of their counterfeit suspect items program, or, yeah, it's different term.
Yeah.
And so, because the US Exxon Import-Export Bank was providing funding for that, and they wanted to see what controls they have in place, because over in Korea, the prime contractor that are building those plants over there had an issue where they had wire, cabling for control rod drive mechanisms that were, the testing reports like this were falsified. So you have, and that's pretty important that you have proper cabling and that get the age testing to see how they'll perform over the years. All that was falsified, and so it was fraudulent. Okay, so the bank wanted to know, what do you have in place over here
To check.
to make
Yeah.
sure that none of that stuff gets into.
That's what I was wondering, who's minding the story, in this particular story? What do you just accept the paperwork, or do you have anything that you do your own check and validation?
Well, I mean, usually if you're going to order a lot of steel, depending on what you use it for, right, you may require them to not only have a certificate of conformance, but it might be a material test report. Show me the chemistry of the stuff, right? That can be falsified too. I mean, at what point where, it's trust but verify. That's why you need to go audit your suppliers to make sure that they have the programs in place to give you confidence that what they're going to give you is going to work.
That's what you hit on the end there, is it's that trust relationships that you're building with your suppliers, and that they have a good program.
Right.
So you're almost not auditing them and their stuff, but also auditing their program, that they're checking what they're doing.
Right.
And how are you auditing your suppliers? And so it's not, we're going to do your work for you, but we're going to make sure that you know how to do your quality program.
Exactly. I think I first became aware of quality as a young engineer when I was working for the Tennessee Valley Authority in their nuclear program, and there was the counterfeit, I think it was fasteners, that really got a lot of
Killed
attention.
everybody.
Yeah, that killed everybody, and so it seems to get a lot more press, and it's a lot easier to talk about product quality. Now, Management Solutions, we provide a service. So think about it just a minute. Service quality. I think we all know when we go to a restaurant, when we go to have our car fixed, or even, if we're buying engineering services or a technical service, we kind of know in our gut what quality is. What are some of the things that you're looking for in a service-oriented quality program? I mean, you're still looking for reliability, very similar to, to a parts or a component. Janet?
Communications,
Yes.
critical.
Yeah, communications of requirements
Of
to
everything.
the work teams that are actually.
I have a hard time getting a hold of a person consistently. If, when I do talk to them, I need a translator for
Right.
English into English, because I don't have a clue what they're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's.
Either cultural or technical.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that buzzword? I'm looking that up.
Or, Yankee Southern to go to
Right.
Misty's Point early. I've been that.
What the heck's a
Yeah.
stone?
Yeah. So we kind of know what it feels like, but so that was our challenge. What we wanted to do was put together a quality program that was a right size, right fit, and that it was suitable for the service industry as opposed to products. So the purpose of the quality office, just in a nutshell, is a standard approach. Chris hit on that quite a bit. To monitor our quality during execution. I'm going to quote Randy Engelbarker, who is not here today, but Joe is here in his absence. Randy used to say, "You get what you inspect, not what you expect." So again, to the point of trust but verify, and another strong component that we wanted to incorporate was to incorporate the lessons learned, so that we are not only capturing and communicating, but we're also taking action. Learned. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So this is a little bit of an eye chart, but what is a project quality office? What we wanted to do at the very highest level was to tie in with our organizational vision and objectives. So that's thus the quality policy, and I will say that was a direct comment that came from ORAU. that any quality program that is put into place has to tie into the vision and objectives of the corporation, of the company at the highest level. Then, working our way down, more detailed as you go down, define a quality policy and methodology. Then our processes and procedures for project review and quality audits. Next, our lessons learned, both capture and communication and taking action. And then at the very lowest level, defining our best practices, procedures, templates, checklists, and we organize these and align them with the PMBOK, or the Project Management Institute, knowledge areas and their process groups. So again, we are an organization of project managers, so that's kind of a commonality of language that they can understand to get to those. So again, providing the structure around our processes and templates to ensure that we deliver the highest customer value and consistently conform. So, we want to talk a little bit about how we equip our project managers, what the PQO does differently than what we were doing in the past. And Misty always likes to point out that we were providing excellent service to our clients. And most of our clients have their own processes and procedures. So when we go into a client organization, we work within their processes and procedures. But what this does is takes a step back and puts our own structure within our company, within our internal organization to provide, to basically start quality in our thinking prior to even going into our client site. But, so an internal set of processes, ensuring that the project teams work to those procedures and guidelines. One point is just to make sure that the PQO, that our processes and procedures are fit for their purpose. And I think that's, I think you have to have somebody who's minding the store so that what your processes are not out of date. They are suitable for. We have multiple different client segments. We provide services to healthcare. We provide services to the federal government, also to commercial construction contractors. That our templates and checklists are suitable for that type of work, depending on which market segment, and that the PQO will work together with our client engagement managers and our project managers to make sure that that quality is being provided on their projects. Now, quality assurance is not a new concept. It has been, I think as we talked about, I first became aware of it in my nuclear days back in the 80s, and it goes back even further than that, mostly surrounding product quality. But basically just to understand the requirements, audit your execution during the project course, provide recommendations and guidance, and to Chris's point earlier, just make sure that the right things are done at the right time. Now, a project quality office was a little bit of a new concept to me. I'm familiar with quality organizations that are aligned functionally, but a project quality office is something that I think a little bit different twist on quality in that it could be part of a PMO, or project management office, or it can reside just separately within a functional organization. So in Management Solutions, that is our project quality office is residing within our functional organization, but still oriented around project quality. So during an audit, we definitely want to factor in customer expectations. And I want to just point out the difference between expectations and maybe what's defined in requirements. I don't know if anybody's had that experience before, but yes, I see a lot of heads nodding. Sometimes the customer expectations and what is actually written in the scope of work, if you even have a well-defined scope of work. There you go, I hear you. So it may be different. So I think that's part of the audit objectives, are to kind of get to the crux of what are the real expectations. And quality audits, from our perspective, a little different than project reviews, really look at more of the technical, the service, and see how it compares to what our scope requirements are, report and communicate the results, and then make recommendations for improvement. How we do this, or how our intention is to do this, I think one of the things that was very important to us was that we integrate this quality culture into our existing organization. I think there's a lot of philosophies that the quality office will take care of that. Well, in our organization, we wanted to integrate it and you know, bring in our own subject matter experts to, you know, to not only be aware of what the industry standard is, you know, look, we're looking at the customer requirements, we're looking at the industry standards, we're looking at the contract requirements, our own internal processes and procedures for quality. So all of those kind of coming together during the audit. I mentioned project reviews and the difference. Quality audits, we're looking more at the technical delivery, whereas a project review is looking more at performance. So what during a project review, we're gonna, it's kind of the health check, if you will. It's, you know, performed at the beginning, depending on the risk of the project at the beginning, maybe multiple check-ins during the execution and then at closure. But again, checking in on the customer relationship and the expectations, how are we doing financially, both in the customer eyes and within our own shop. Are our deliverables on time? I mean, that's a important check-in. And do we even know what all the deliverables are? That's another one that you know, sometimes gets lost in large, very complicated projects. How are we doing on staffing? You know, I mean, again, these are things that we look at during a review that is a different check than the quality side of things. But again, let's say we've got that hole in our staffing plan that still isn't filled, or we've got maybe a performer that's not up to where they should be. Is that going to affect quality? Absolutely. So looking at the challenges and risks, look back, how we're doing, look forward, what's coming up, and again, talk about lessons learned. This statement, Misty, have you seen this one? I hope so. TQO must be empowered, and so many organizations, and again, this goes back to my background in nuclear, the quality organization has to be an independent arm of the company. They cannot be a you know, a hidden way down in the organization. They have to have the ability to say, I need a stakeholder to come into this review. I need management to be here. They need to be able to challenge, hey, we're, you know, when you know, we say this is the way we've always done it, to say, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't be doing it like that going forward. But, so it takes them back. All right, lessons learned. One thing that I think we're doing different than the way I traditionally knew about lessons learned. Lessons learned, you know, we're all probably familiar with that lessons learned review at the end of the project. So at the end, you all come together and you say, you know, what went well, what didn't go well, and, you know, let's get it all down. And, you know, on a long project, there may, you know, that may not be as appropriate. So what we're asking our project managers to do, and not just project managers, but the entire project team, to capture those lessons learned as you go. When you experience them, when they're fresh on your mind, we have set up like a database, a knowledge base, if you will, that anyone in the company has access to. So that is for capturing lessons learned. We've set it up so there's a keyword search. So before you start that next phase or that next project that has some similarities, you can pull up those, you know, previously documented lessons learned and learn from them. Thus the name.
Kelly, if I could interject, we're not only saying go look at it, we're requiring you to look at them. That's on the checklist of the project initiation checklist. Thou shalt go look at lessons learned. So learn from those who've gone before you, right? That's the requirement, right? Just to further pile on and emphasize that.
And we're not saying don't do a lessons learned review. I think in particular for large, complex projects, you may even want a formal, facilitated, you know, documented lessons learned. And again, we're not looking for just the things that went bad. We're looking for, you know, what things went well so that we can replicate and roll into our processes.
This is a bit of challenge, and multiple organizations that I've worked with have all done the lessons learned database.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes this laundry list of ideas that sometimes become
The braining list?
it's like you say, go read the lessons learned list, and you're like, I don't have 2 years to read all the ideas that have been put into the lesson. How do you take that lessons learned and make it learnt?
Yeah.
You know, how do we make it part of our culture? How do you make it part of your organization? That you're not making that same error, or that you've taken that great idea and made it part of your culture. I think that's where, for me, I've seen lessons learned kind of just get put on the shelf.
Right.
And it's like, how do you make that part of your culture? How do you avoid that lesson in the future? How do you learn?
Well, what we're hoping for, and again, we have just stood up our project quality office, so we don't have a lot of data to show yet how well all of our processes are working yet. But what our plan is there, we have in the knowledge base, when you record your lessons learned, what is the intended audience? So the intended audience may just be a particular business group. It may only pertain to healthcare, or it may only pertain to commercial construction, or it may only pertain to DOE projects. So we've put in there, what is the intended audience? Now, you know, it could be something that is not just a business group, it's company-wide. It's something that we all need to know, and that needs to be communicated. So we're not just saying, go read the lessons learned knowledge base. We're taking the action through that checkbox that says, what is the intended audience? There may even be times that we have to have an adult conversation with our customer to say, this is something we learned and it affects you, or you were part of this. And you know, it may be that tough love kind of discussion to say, I just want, you know, this is a lessons learned. Our people brought this up, I think you need to know about this. So I think it's not just getting them down, it's what you do with that.
That's it.
What you do with that, and how, and again, we're not suggesting that the project quality office, though they can facilitate lessons learned reviews, that the project quality office is responsible for that. It is part of each one of our business units.
It's the user. Okay, so quality office is managing the lessons learned, but the user, the owning organization, really needs to take a look at those lessons learned and see how. And it's not just the first one. I'm seeing a pattern in the lessons learned. Okay, I'm starting to see
a trend here.
There's a trend here. We need to make a step change.
Right.
There's a trend here, and that's the part I think so many organizations lose.
Right.
Is that I've recorded my lessons learned, and you think, okay, I've checked off my pin box
I've done it.
list. But if you're not using that data that you've collected, it just becomes a
It's
bunch
just
of data.
another thing that goes
You've
on.
got to trend it, you've got to look at it, you've got to take action towards it.
That's exactly
That's
right.
why you want to become a learning organization,
Yeah.
where you espouse continuous improvement, right? And like you said, often it's just a check in a box. Project's over, here's what we learned, boom, put that on the shelf. And the longer time span you get away from it, the more it's out of memory.
That's right.
Right, and we're not gonna do anything with it.
And I've been the new project engineer or project manager on a job and go, yep, I opened it up, I read them, and I checked the box that I said I did I looked at the lessons learned list. But that's the part that's always been like a thorn in my, it's like, fine, I've read them, but what are we doing to implement
To
that
use it.
learning?
Right. Did we really change a process? Did we really do something that is going to make this?
And Ernie, like Kelly was talking about with the database, we've tried to make it so flexible so that you can do the searches as appropriate. We mandate that you go look, but we don't want to make it so burdensome that you have to read 700 things that wouldn't be pertinent to you, right?
Well,
so we've tried to.
The organization we came from was a very old organization, so it had lots of lessons.
You know the deal. We both know the deal. But so here at Management Solutions, we've tried to integrate our project quality office in a way that makes sense at our scale. Right? So we're a relatively small, medium-sized organization in the certain key markets that we serve. We've tried to scale it in a way that makes sense, and it's flexible enough to be useful rather than just burdensome.
Yeah, and I guess
That
we're
was
just
the
taking the
overriding-
next step,
one of the
is the
overriding
trending.
visions. Yeah.
You nailed it when you were saying you're trending the
Yeah.
lessons learned. Okay, now we have to do
But
something.
you're right, Ernie, it's going to be a challenge to us to manage that in a way that's effective going forward. We're still nascent in this, still have to learn how to do that appropriately.
Well, and
But that's our
again,
challenge, right?
it is our challenge, and it's back to our quality policy, where we said we want to make quality part of our culture. And I think that's, again, right-sizing it for the size and type of organization that we are, and then making it part of each business unit you know, culture and mission, as opposed to just being the project quality office going like a lone wolf over here howling in the wind. We had lessons learned on that, you know.
I think another advantage too is recognize that the PQO for us and quality organizations inside businesses are built on things. And for us, we have a culture of learning already built into what we do. This is finding a way to tap into that value that we have. You know, the organization here, we talk a lot about having a growth mindset with our consultants. And it's what's taken our folks forward in what we do and helped us grow to where we are now. So we're not a new organization. We might be new to the structure of a PQO, but this team has been asked to tap into what our teams already know and do. And so if you try to build a database, you'll get data.
Yeah.
And so we have that. The goal for the team is to try to do something that we do anyways, that we did before, which is convert that data into knowledge, that knowledge into wisdom. And so as we make that progression with our teams and our consultants, we're just providing them a tool for something they're already doing.
Yeah.
And now the challenge for them is to design it in a way that is lightweight enough that they can use it to their benefit. So.
Well, and that people will use it, make it easy enough so that anyone in the organization is willing to use it. And hold that thought just a second. The last thought on here, I think, is very important to that we're not punishing people for bringing up things that didn't go well. You know, I think we need to incorporate a reward system for it. You know, if you bring up something that's an innovative way to do better based on something that didn't go well, then I think there should be a reward system for that.
I think it's important not to silo the projects. You've got a quality team that kind of gets to see all the projects, and you've got a senior management that sees all the projects. If they recognize there's a new project that's very similar to an old project, you know, I think it's on them to maybe even bring those teams together. The database is so we don't forget, but it's still going to be a dialogue with them.
Exactly.
All about communication, isn't it?
It's all about
All
talking
about
about it. Yeah, sure is. Sure is. All right, great discussion. Another part of our project quality office is, and I think, Christy, you and I talked about this in terms of organizational knowledge. This is how do you know to do it like that? Part of your business. You have a lot of senior level people. We have a lot of expertise. Getting that down in best practices is a component of our PQO, and we have started with a couple of small volumes, but that is something that is going to grow with us over time as we get that. I mean, currently we've got project management, project controls, process improvement, owner's representative services, but we want to grow that list and get our, you know, how did you do that, or how did you know to do that into documents, so that when that person retires, or, you know, I never want to say gets hit by the proverbial bus, let's just say wins the lottery.
That's a much nicer one.
Yeah, but again, that can happen at any day and time, and we want to, you know, not only this serves as a tool for our audit process, you know, to have our own best practices that we're auditing against, but also a training tool, and also something that if our customers question, how'd you know to do that? You say, well, it's in our best practices. So, our contributors to that, again, utilizing the entire organization, we have a lot of, you know, varying skills and abilities, a lot of senior level people, so pulling those people in, using our subject matter experts, and taking those contributors with leadership skills and putting them in a role where they may actually be audited. You know, they're the subject matter expert, and they can go in and actually perform audits. So last slide that I will go over before I turn it over to Christy, the benefits and outcomes. And again, since we are still very early in our implementation, we don't have a lot. We have what our hope is for our benefits and outcomes. But again, if implemented effectively, the PQO can you know, provide value much higher than the resources that it took to actually stand it up. And you know, we've talked about it being right-sized. We've talked about it being sustainable, being part of our culture rather than just something that's off to the side. We're looking for improved project performance, increased value, ensure compliance, exceeding, not too far, our customers' expectations, and improving our customer satisfaction. I mean, improving our employee satisfaction. And again, that's one that we don't think about a lot. in quality. We're thinking about the client, but again, if you are working on a project where there's problems, you're not going to want to work on that project. So again, I think everybody wants to be on that project where we are, we're doing the right thing at the right time. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Christy to talk about her experience in as the director of the quality organization for ORU, and thank her again for her input. We went to Christy mid-course. We didn't want to wait till the end and say, here's what we did. And we looked at ORU as our validating entity, so we wanted to have their input mid-course in our implementation. And then we are planning to come back in November to have another review and a little bit more of a retrospective of here's how we incorporated your feedback. And but they gave us a lot of extremely valuable input.
And I have to start by saying, I get a whole bunch of credit, but somebody on my staff is my expert on setting up a quality office. His name is Mike Gregory. Lucky him. He's at the beach right now. But I sent him the information. He came back and I added on a few things, but he's essential to the office. As you've heard, my name is Christy Kistner. I am the Director of Quality for Oak Ridge Associated Universities. Since you might not be familiar with ORU, and I was talking with some folks before this meeting about all of the Oak Ridge this and Oak Ridge that, ORNL, ORU, ORISE, it's kind of confusing. ORU, if you've heard of ORISE, that's a contract that we have with the Department of Energy. That's the Oak Ridge Institute for Science and Education. It's really bad when you're working with a lot of federal government clients. You start to say things all in acronyms, and other people understand you, which is even more alarming. I kept thinking, oh yeah, you're talking about SCI. That's sensitive slash, no, I'm sorry. I say I'm going back to my security days. SCI in security is sensitive compartmented information. SCI in quality is suspect or counterfeit items. Same acronym, except there's a slash in the one for quality. ORU is a nonprofit government contractor. We started out in the 40s after the Manhattan Project as a university consortium at the time just in the southern region to encourage people to study science more, because with all of the nuclear weapon developments, there was a push to get people to study science so that there was knowledge of that information. Today, we've expanded quite a bit. We support Department of Energy. Of course, if you're in East Tennessee, Department of Energy is a big customer for everybody, but also other federal agencies. And we provide scientific and technical solutions for advancing national priorities in science and education. For instance, we have a program called Scientific Assessment and Workforce Development, excuse me, in which we run fellowships for postdoctoral candidates. We run teacher development for K-12. Excuse me, I need a drink of water. We also organize peer reviews of scientific research to get experts together to look at the research that's been done and whether funding should be granted. Strengthen national security. Related to that, if you're familiar at all with Oak Ridge, we operate REACTS. Back to the acronym thing, REACTS stands for the Radiological Emergency Assistance Center and Training Site. REACTS is a lot easier to say. REACTS helps in radiation emergencies. For instance, if you remember Fukushima, they deployed to provide advice on radiation emergency medicine. They also train in radiation emergency management and care. Another area that's related to this, we have one of 2 cytogenetic biodosimetry labs in the US. I'm guessing most people don't know what that is. Cytogenetic biodissymmetry is a way that a scientist can look at a blood sample and based on the way chromosomes look, can back into what dosage level did this person receive. And that's how you can figure out what kind of treatments need to be administered to that person and what their long-term outcomes might look like. That relates to protecting health and the environment. We also run a beryllium lab, which treats former nuclear workers for something that's called chronic berylliosis. Working with nuclear materials, through the years, people have been exposed to beryllium, and sometimes when they develop this chronic berylliosis, they need to be monitored and their health checked, and our beryllium lab does that too. Related to protecting the environment, we have a group within ORAU who will go out to sites, for instance K25, that have been cleaned up and do an independent verification to say, yes, this really is cleaned up. Go out with their radiation detection equipment and check, yes, this really is okay. We've talked already this morning about the definition of quality, and you've heard about quality assurance and quality control. I like to use an analogy that everybody can understand to describe the difference between QA and QC, because those are frequently mixed up. Quality assurance is ensuring that you have a process that yields good results. And quality control is to check to make sure that you're following your process. The analogy I use is baking a cake. If you're baking a cake, the quality assurance is the recipe. You follow the recipe, that is a process that has been shown to yield good results. The quality control is when you're making the cake to taste the batter. You're checking to make sure that you got things right, that it tastes like you think it should, and that you haven't added, for instance, salt instead of sugar or something like that. That's an example that I like to apply to QA and QC, especially at ORAU, to explain that our Office of Quality focuses primarily on quality assurance. Quality assurance, we do assessments, and Kelly already mentioned reviews or audits. We call them assessments. We refer to them other things as analyses. We also have an audit services department. And we've chosen the word assessment to draw a distinction between what audit services is doing and what the Office of Quality is doing. And all of this at ORAU works together as DOE calls it, a graded approach to prepare us for external audits. ORAU is subject to approximately 40 external audits a year. We have a lot of adult supervision from a variety of organizations. The Office of Quality goes out and does an assessment to identify positive practices that should be sustained and areas for improvement that should be improved, of course. Then the hope is that business units will take care of some of these items that we've pointed out as areas for improvement. When we make a recommendation, it's an option. When our audit services department comes in, they look at compliance. When they don't make recommendations, they issue findings, and you have to fix them. And this is part of the approach. We're hoping that the Office of Quality finds something and fix it before audit services comes in. If that doesn't work out, hopefully it gets fixed before an external auditor comes in, because then there's a serious problem and we really have to fix what's been found. What we've started recently, previously we would go to each business unit in the company and do an assessment. What we've been transitioning to recently is risk-based assessments. Based on processes that span the entire organization, you get more bang for the buck if you're looking at things that span the organization, and it gives more benefit to the company as a whole. We've only done one of these risk-based assessments so far, but it related to project management, in fact. And we're looking into having better definitions for what ORU calls a project manager and what their responsibilities and authorities are within the organization. For analyses, we focus more on quality control. This is usually something that a business unit manager requests us to do. It can be to look at a particular problem and make specific suggestions, or on occasion, we get someone to come in and say, we have this document that we need to submit. For instance, going back to REACTS, they are accredited through, again, acronyms, ACCME, the American Council on Continuing Medical Education, which is one of the more exacting organizations I've experienced. They have requirements that when you submit documentation, the spacing has to be exactly this much. And your heading has to be 1 inch above where the text starts. They're very, very detailed. It's really good to get another set of eyes on that. And I'm going to give you an example of an experience that I had where things went wrong. This goes back a lot of years. It was before I lived in this area. ORU had a contract with the Department of Homeland Security. I was on the unfortunate team rewriting the National Response Plan, which you all heard about in Hurricane Katrina. And it was fairly high level. We had to send briefings to the Secretary of Homeland Security. And there's something in emergency management called emergency support functions. And number 13 is public safety and security. You can hear, just thinking about those words, what happened. We misspelled public. We left out the L. And we sent the presentation to Secretary of Homeland Security Michael Chertoff. That's a really good example that I've retained for many, it's like 10 years ago, of why you need to have another set of eyes on a document. We were rushing, everything was very busy. We always counted on the rumor within DHS that the secretary never read his read-aheads. I still don't know if he saw the error. Related to lessons learned, we already had a conversation about this. I had a similar instance of misspelling something. I would misspell the word team as TEM. And unfortunately, I only did it when I sent it to the CEO of the company. If I sent it something that had TEM in it, it was always the CEO. I've created a job aid for removing words from spell check. I'm assuming you have everybody's email. Please share the job aid.
We actually shared that as one of our tools of the month, I think, in our newsletter. We did.
Because TEM appears as a word. I'm guessing it has to do with pro tempore, but it wouldn't underline it. Back to misspellings of public, or another one we discovered is arch rival. That's a misspelling of archival. The one everybody's seen is manger. It's a real word, but you probably didn't intend to use that. You probably meant manager. That's why I created this job aid. If you look at the job aid, you'll see why it's important to have documented that lesson learned, because thank you, Microsoft, removing words, it's easy to add words to spell check. Removing them, it's a Byzantine process. It's really challenging. Once you have it set up, it's easy to add things, but it's not an easy thing to do. After I had sent at least 3 or 4 things to the CEO that had TEM instead of team, okay, this isn't happening again. Our office also does customer satisfaction surveys. We have some award fee letters for some of the contracts we run where DOE goes out and surveys customers, but there are a number of customers who aren't surveyed in any other way. We send out an annual survey to get their feedback on how we're doing, find things that are going well that we should keep doing, and also address deficiencies that come up. Finally, although not really finally, because I am in the ISO 9001 universe right now, I'm living ISO because we have our surveillance audit on the 24th of this month.
And you're here?
Yes. We're pretty much ready. I hope. We went for external validation of our quality systems we started the process, I think, in 2008. We got ready, we achieved registration. In 2013 was the audit, we got the certificate in 2014. Last year, we moved to the 2015 version of the standard, which came out in September of 2015. We were originally registered to the 2008 version. In my personal opinion, the 2015 version is much better for the average business. It became much less prescriptive and left it up to organizations to make sure that it works for what their business is doing. As you can imagine, with the diversity of contracts and business lines that we have going in ORAU, there's a lot of variation and different ways that people do things. We do have templates to help everybody implement document control, for instance, and look at customer satisfaction, which aligns with a number of the things that we're doing within ORAU. One of the areas that we focused on is doing training for employees to teach them quality tools. I have 2 examples of quality tools that we teach people. One of them is the flowcharts. I like to find funny examples. So I found a flowchart for, am I a horse? which helps you understand how a flowchart would work. In the real world, you would create a flowchart of a process to say, first we do this, then we look at a decision point. If the answer is yes, we follow this path. If it's no, we follow this path. And it's a very useful tool, not only for documenting what the process is, but there's something in quality called mistake proofing. If you have a flowchart, you can go through the flowchart and say, do we need this step? If you have to have the step, what could go wrong here? And how would you know that it went wrong so that you can anticipate and establish metrics to make sure that if something went wrong, you find it before it goes to the customer. Kind of like the document review that I already mentioned. Fishbone diagrams are a good way to figure out the root cause of a problem. The diagram you have up here is one that I created for myself about why do I have a messy house. And the bones are policies, in this case, high-level decision rules, people who lives in the house, plant or technology, in our case that's the tools and resources we use, and procedures, what steps we take. Ultimately, I decided that the root cause is that we don't have a live-in maid. That's what we need.
I like the cats.
Yes, a sub-problem there is we have cats, they're messy, they don't help clean.
Once you go further, why don't you have a live-in maid? Why don't you have a maid?
That's a different tool, it's 5 why.
Yes, 5 whys is part of
Totally
this.
different.
We don't have a live-in maid because, well, we don't make enough money.
Well, why not?
Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
It just keeps going.
It just keeps going. But ultimately, I need the live-in maid. Now, I made this fishbone diagram many years ago. We still don't have a live-in maid. We still have cats.
We still have the problem.
Yes.
Not happening yet.
Why do we have cats? Because we love them. I was almost late to this meeting this morning because one of them curled up in my arm and put her head there. Get up. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, we won't get to the question slide.
Yeah, the next slide says questions. So just pretend that this says questions. Does anybody have any questions related to all of this? And also, do you have any real-life examples of things that went well with quality, things that didn't go well with quality? Something, I always like the amusing examples of something that went wrong. I'll give you one other one. We did an emergency preparedness exercise for the Hoover Dam a number of years ago. And the exercise plan had multiple different sections. So the header wasn't the same for all of the sections. In most of the sections, it said Hoover Dam exercise, but a few of them, it said Hoover Dame exercise.
I see you're with spelling.
Yes.
You said ORA involved in emergency management. Were you all involved with the emergency management of the situation in Gatlinburg with the fires?
We were not, although we did have a number of employees who were involved in emergency management who did go down there to assist as volunteers. But that was something that was TEMA, which is the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency, back in the acronyms.
Okay.
A number of years ago, if you recall the fly ash spill, we were involved in some education, some health monitoring to make sure that people were getting the information that they needed and that people hadn't been exposed to something that they weren't aware of.
You mentioned your misspelling and for quality check. We were building sintered metal filters.
The S-I-N-T-E-R-E-D, right?
Sintered.
Process.
We had sinister metal filters on all the documentation because somebody, you know, they went to the first place where it was, and they kept going back and checking it against the misspelled word. And we caught it when we were doing the O&M manual. So every piece of paper on the entire project had the wrong word in it. All the drawings, and this was before it being a CAD, so they were melon drawings, and we were erasing and rewriting.
Oh.
Yes, so I understand the spell check. Well,
At least you're consistent.
we were very consistent. And we went back and checked the spec to say, okay, yeah, okay, they spelled it the same, all right. And nobody went, I think that's not right.
You know,
The precise versus accurate.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's precisely accurate, right?
We were very accurate.
Two-part question. How are you all going to roll out the training for this program? And I guess the other part of the question is, what would you recommend for a company, I'm with Jacobs, 55,000 people? For the engineers, when you say quality, they only think of technical specs. They don't think of, you know, the corporate compliance quality at all. So when they have to, they just basically read it online, sign the dotted line, they're done, they don't really read it. How would you recommend it a company like that?
Ooh, I don't know, that's a much larger scale than what we are. We've actually started our training already, and because of our staff is not centered here in the office, they're all out of client sites, we've decided to do online training. So that has, you know, worked fairly well. I think the distinction that I have always, you know, added to that is just, you know, if something goes wrong, you say, well, they were trained. Well, okay, they were trained, but were they doing it? I think it's really not just about training and having required reading or required training or refresher training or, you know, I mean, I see our training growing as we add best practices, as we add new, you know, business lines, that our training will, you know, it'll just grow with us. I see it more as the check after the training as to are they actually incorporating. So that is an extra layer beyond the training. It's not just the checking the box of the training. It's, you know, I mean, I you know, countless times it's like, well, the process is broke. Well, why is it broke? I don't know, they were trained. You know, that's not the same all.
I think some of that is, you gotta make it applicable to them. So you find examples that say, we had, one of the examples I was talking about earlier with the lessons learned is, we were finding that the communication between our supplier sending us documentation and us, we needed certain documentation for us to complete our work. The engineers were just getting really frustrated by it. And we, from all the lessons learned, we went, we've got a problem in our process. We implemented a change, and all of a sudden, the engineers' lives changed. They were getting what they needed when they needed it. They went, oh, and we're like, that was quality. Oh, okay, we can do this.
And so if I can pile on to both you and Kayla, so it comes back to communication again, right? So, so you found something that, what's in it for me? The engineers got something useful out of it, but if they didn't know it was there for them to know, then it wouldn't have been a thing, right? So communication, right? So the punch the ticket, Yeah, they're trained, but it's more than just that. It's more about an organizational infusion of quality as an expectation from the highest level of management in the company all the way down, right? It has to start with the boss. I mean, if the boss don't get on board, if she's not in the court with you, it ain't gonna work, right? No matter what happens below that, no matter how many procedures, how much training, it has to be a part of the hearts and the minds of the folks. It has to be something in it for them. What's in it for them? We've tried to build a program that has something in it for them, right? That has actually useful stuff that will help you with your job day to day, and we've communicated that. So the training is really more than anything a communication tool about, hey, look what we got here. Here's what it is, here's how you use it. So it comes down to communication, in my opinion, right? It's really all about that. My personal opinion, work with y'all pay for it, so.
I would add one other piece to that.
Yes, please.
The top down is absolutely critical. If they think the management isn't behind it, then, you know, it's just a check the box. The other thing I would mention is not everybody learns the same way. So a lot of times when we roll out training, it's one size fits all. And you'll find that, yeah, that might capture 20% of your employees. The rest of them trained as well, but they haven't really taken it all in. So when folks talk about saying the same thing 5 times, don't say the same thing 5 times the same way. Find 5 different ways to communicate that same message. And that way, hopefully, you'll hit every single person just with a slightly different way.
And I'll add that it's definitely important to have senior leadership buy-in and involvement. It's also very important, as Ernie mentioned, to convey what's in it for me. Why are we doing this? If my office says you must do this, well, people will do it to check the box. The reason you're doing this is to avoid having this issue. Oh, okay, and then people will buy into it. But like you said with compliance, if it's just training, yeah, okay, I'm done. It hasn't really been inculcated into people. If people see the value, that's where you need to go. It's always challenging to get people to see the value, especially when everybody's so busy. But frequently, if you can convey, well, if you do this, think about this problem that occurred, you can avoid having that happen again. Okay, good, I'll do that.
What's in it for me?
What's in it for me is really important.
Communication and awareness that there's something in it for you.
So what metrics are you implementing?
Well, that will be more of an offline discussion on our project management best practices. We're actually looking at kind of the hard set of skills and the soft set of skills for project management. And of course, it would be different in our project controls area, it would be different, you know, in our other best practices. So
But from a quality perspective, you have quality specific metrics that you're measuring?
So it's at the PMO level, yes, and that's going to be reflected in essentially, did you do what, so here's what we say we're going to do, did you do it? That's essentially the high level quality metric at the PQO level. And to Kelly's point,
and it will be by service offering.
Right, it's by, we have different business verticals, that's going to be very different within them, what is defined as quality in that organization. We do as such the diversity of client base, so there's not a quick answer to that one, other than the high level PQO. Good question, great question. You know, if you don't measure it, you don't manage it. So there you go. Sir.
Do you have plans for the PQO office to do some review of your checklists or other kind of governing documents to make updates as you take some lessons learned and then add them into your process?
Absolutely. So all the documents, all the checklists, every document we have is a living document. And I don't know that we have officially mandated a cadence on the cycle of assessment of those, but that's absolutely critical. We have to stay up to date. We have to continue meeting the ever-changing needs of our client base. So I don't know that we have a cadence.
Well, we planned an annual review.
Annual, but I don't know if that's necessarily, I don't have a quick cadence to tell you we're going to do it every quarter for this business unit, but there is the annual that
Well, what
overlays
we're
it all.
expecting, since we are in the early stages of implementation, that we will probably have a lot of feedback and changes coming in up front. So there,
So the first
we put configuration management on all our documents, and we want to make sure that, you know, we always have the freshest document that's out there. But yeah, we're expecting that we will probably have some early changes and then go into a regular.
Because again, we're kind of new to it, right, in this organization. So it's going to be that first batch of iterative look-ats will be a bigger set probably as we converge toward normalcy, right, and we go steady state with it finally. Good question, thanks. Others? We're a little bit over time, don't want to belabor the point too much, but.
Thank you for all the participation.
Yeah.
And great thoughts and ideas.